our journey through the book of John, and so one of the lengthier chapters in the book. John chapter 8. We left off talking in verse 44 that Jesus makes the statement, a very bold statement, I'm sure a very offensive statement to the Pharisees and those that heard him who were who did not like him. That he said that he came right out and said, "You are of your father the devil, and the lusts of the father will ye do." So he's talking about that. Again, he made that statement in verse 23 that we are from beneath, Jesus is from above, and there's a significant difference between the two, because Jesus does and says those things that he had heard and seen from his Father, and that's why he's making this distinction that if he's doing those things, and the same holds true for us, if Jesus is doing and saying the things that he had heard from his Father, and we are not, then who is our Father? That's the message he's getting across to these Pharisees. It was like, look, you're doing the lusts of your father, who is definitely, obviously, not my father. Why? In verse 44 he says, because he was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there was no truth in him. So, he's talking about the devil, he's talking about being the father of murdering, and he says when he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. So, who is the father of lies? The devil. And that doesn't mean that we can blame the devil if we choose to lie, or blame the devil if we choose to murder, because all the devil really does is plant thoughts in our head. He did the same thing to Eve in the garden, in working his way to deceiving her into an act that she knew that she wasn't supposed to be involved in. Same with Adam. Because, I mean, unless Adam was so naive that he didn't tell Eve, but the serpent went to Eve first, he got in her mind. He got into her head. And that is where the strongest battleground takes place, is in our head. And that's what Jesus is trying to get across to these folks, is that you're doing the things that you think about, because the devil had no truth in him, and neither do you. And by the way, when we are born into this world, we are in that same condition. There is no truth in us. Well, why isn't there any truth in us when we're born? Because we're born sinners. We are born without Jesus. And Jesus is the truth. And so until he is allowed to come inside of us when we receive him, there's no truth in us, no matter how much we think we might have truth in us. That doesn't mean that a liar or someone who is not born again can never tell the truth. But there's a difference in telling the truth and having the truth in you. See? That's why Jesus could not have sinned. Because the truth was and is always in him. And he can never lie. So if he can never lie, he'll never sin. We can't say that even when we're born again, because we still have that old nature inside of us that wars with us and toys with us and wants to distract us and take us away from Jesus. So that's where we left off. Very bold, very strong statement. And if you notice that one of the last thing in verse 44, both murder and lying are deliberate. They are intentional. And so, very strong statements. So let's pray, and then we'll pick it up in verse 45. Father, again, thank you for your loving us. Thank you for Jesus. Thank you for bringing us together this morning so that we can once again open your word, look at it, the very bread of life, Lord, and use it to transform us and renew our minds, so that we will think, speak, and behave like Jesus. In his name we pray, amen. So now going down to verse 45, after he makes that bold statement in verse 44, he says, and because I tell you the truth, ye believe me not. Well, they had taken the opposite direction. Rather than believing him, what were they trying to do? They were plotting to do what? Kill him. Because they hated him. And isn't that kind of some of the way when we're around those and we're trying to tell them the truth, especially if it's really kind of maybe about some behavior or their thinking, the way they're thinking? If we tell them that, that I don't know that that's really true, a lot of times they get all raised up. And they get all angry. And they get all mad. And a lot of times they want to kill. Or at the very least, they want to silence you. That's a lot of times what happens. And we see it even in our political system. You get a candidate up there that wants to stand on the truth and say, this is wrong. And they're going to, our political system, the way it is now, says, we need to get rid of this guy. And it's not just wrong because I say it's wrong. You get somebody up there, I challenge, get somebody up there who's going to stand on this and say, this is wrong because Jesus Christ said so. And what do you think is going to happen to that candidate? They're going to throw him out. They're going to get rid of this guy. Because we don't like what he is saying. That's what Jesus says here. And because I tell you the truth, you won't believe me. Why won't you believe me? Because you want things to stay the same as they are for you. You won't change the way you think. Because by the way, what he was saying was a direct threat to their way of life, their way of thinking, the power that they had over the people. Verse 46. Another bold statement. Which of you convinceth me of sin? And if I say the truth, why do ye not believe me? So here we go. And that word convinceth there means convicts. Or which of you finds fault in me? Who amongst you can find fault in me? Anything I've said, anything I've done. Listen, investigate. I'm challenging you now. I'm putting it out there. Investigate my life. Investigate the things I've said. And see if you can find fault. Would any of us in this room like to take that challenge for yourself? I am not going to sit there and allow say, okay, any one of you investigate my life and see if you can find any sin. Because you know what? It won't take you long to find out that, yep, there it is. Why? There's no perfection here. The only way I'm right is when Jesus is right. But you will find, if you follow my life, and you follow some of the things I've said, you will find that I don't always line up with Jesus. And those are the things that Jesus is trying to change about my life. So that I will think and speak and behave like he does. And the same holds true for you. Which of you would allow any one of us to investigate your life? Follow you around for a little while to see if there's any sin in your life. Would you be willing? It would be helpful so you know, but are you bold enough to say like Jesus, okay, convince me, convict me of sin. I don't have any sin. Would you be willing to say that? No. That would be foolish. And neither would I. Jesus can say that. Jesus allows anyone, look at my life. And the same holds true today. That's why we can stand so firmly on his word. He is more, he is the standard. Not you or I. Don't compare to you. Don't compare yourself to me or let me compare myself to you. None of that stuff, because we are all in the same boat. None of us are perfect. God is trying to sanctify us. God is trying to make us into the image of Jesus. But as long as we're on this earth, the way it is, we'll never get there. Because there's always going to be that sinful nature that still wars in us. So Jesus is the standard. Our striving should be to allow him. We can't work for it. He has to work it through us as he sanctifies us through his word. He is the standard. he is also like the prosecutor. Because we're kind of the defendants. We're the ones that are really on the guilty side of the whole thing. And before we know Jesus, we have no advocate. We have nothing. We cannot defend ourselves at all. That's kind of where the Pharisees are. They have no defense. Now, when Jesus comes into our life and we are born again, we have that advocate. So when the devil accuses us, Jesus stands up and says, no, wait a minute, nope, that's mine. He's mine. And since I'm righteous, that person's righteous. Because it's no longer his works, it's mine. And devil, you've got no place. But the Pharisees, didn't have that option. And he's saying there that, show me my sin. Don't make it up. Because if you remember, what were they trying to do to Jesus? Find witnesses. Find somebody that can go ahead and solidify and substantiate that this guy is a liar or a sinner. They tried all kinds of different things, didn't they? They've looked at his background. They've looked at the trail of his life. Going from Galilee and Nazareth. They've looked at his parents and his lineage. They accused him of being illegitimate. All these things that they were trying to manufacture, but they failed. No fault. And the challenge, we can do the same thing today. When people don't want to believe us, just say, look, investigate his life. Find the fault in him. Verse 47. He that is of God heareth God's words. Ye therefore hear them not, because ye are not of God. See, here's it. Jesus' life was supported by the truth and founded in the truth. There is no sin at all because him and God are one. And he hears God's words like we don't hear God's words. Because there are times we will block God's words out. And why would we do that? Yeah. We don't want to give up our sin. We will not allow God to change us and mold us and make us and change the way we think. So we say, I believe everyone in this room would say, I believe Jesus is the truth. And yet, sometimes he speaks the truth to us, and we don't believe him. And we can sit there and go, oh, woe is me, this, that, and the other. And no, it's just a matter of, okay, when we recognize this, allow God to change our heart and our mind. That's what the painful process of sanctification, that's what it's all about. And it's not to make us into somebody that we can rise up and boast about ourselves. Because it's not us that does it. And it's not us that's living through us. It's Jesus. So he gets all the credit. Verse 48. Now, the Pharisees are really grabbing for straws. Because he says, then answered the Jews and said unto him, say we not well that thou art a Samaritan and hast a devil? Now these Jews, why are they grabbing for straws? Well, look, they said they nailed him for being from Galilee. They tried to nail him for being from Nazareth. Now they're going to Samaria. Well, I'm pretty sure that they can remember. Remember in John chapter 4? Where did Jesus go through? Samaria. That's where he met the woman at the well, isn't it? So now, wait a minute. Just because he went through Samaria, does that automatically make him from Samaria? No. Do you see what they're trying to do here? And why pick on the Samaritans? minute, let's think about this. So because for anybody who's from Samaria, is that a sin to be from Samaria? That would be like saying being from Olustee or Sanderson is a sin. So because that's where y'all are from, you're all sinners. How about that? Huh? That's silly, but look how they're trying to grasp for something, and their hatred for the Samaritans. Because the Samaritans were kind of half Jew, half Gentile. There's also some that would believe that the Samaritans come out of the lineage of Cain. And what is Cain noted for? Killing his brother. So they weren't from the line of Seth. They were, and the Bible talks about Cain being the son of perdition. And so there was a lot of evil around Cain. He was a murderer. And so they don't want to be associated with that. So now they're trying to tie Jesus to being from Samaria and that being a sin. How silly. But if we're not careful, we can do the same things in the way we judge people. If we're not careful, we'll look at people in the same light and try to find anything we can to cause sin in their life and make it sinful and a reason why perhaps we're better than them. And that's kind of what these Jews are doing here. They're still trying to they're looking down upon Jesus from being from a people in a place that they don't like to elevate themselves above him so that they can say he has a devil, and if he has a devil, then can he be telling the truth? No. Because even Jesus says there's no truth in him. So they're looking at it, and they're trying to get the crowd maybe on their side to look at him and say, look, he's from Samaria, therefore he has to have a devil, because you know what the Samaritans are like. You can't trust them guys. And so we have that battle going on. In verse 49, Jesus answers, I have not a devil, but I honor my Father, and ye do dishonor me. So I don't envision him taking getting all angry about it and getting all mad about it and lashing out at them. Matter of fact, he completely ignores the whole statement and accusation about being from Samaria, and he just simply says, I don't have a devil. I honor my Father, and ye do dishonor me. So what does he do? He throws it back in their lap. He throws it right back at them. You're trying to dishonor me. You're trying to discredit me. You're trying to find fault in me. I'm challenging you to find it. You're grasping at straws to find that fault. And you know, if we stay on the side of the Lord and we hold true to his word and we don't cave in, I assure you, there are going to be people that are going to do this very thing. They're going to try to dig up dirt. And if they can't dig it up, they'll manufacture it. They'll fabricate it. So we shouldn't be surprised when that happens. And the thing we have to be careful of is not raising up in defense of ourselves. Because what kind of exchange do you think may have envisioned the kind of exchange if Jesus rose up and got angry and perhaps raised his voice and started really getting all red in the face and his veins are popping and he's getting angry with his tone? What might that have looked like? Yes. It would have looked more like now they've got him back into a corner and he has to try to defend himself. See, Jesus never really had to prove he was right to anybody. he did it. But he didn't have to. That he didn't have to feel ever backed into a corner, because he could say with all confidence, investigate me. Go ahead. Turn yourself loose. Find whatever you can. Find where I've ever lied. To anybody. Go ahead. Talk to your friends. Talk to your neighbors. Talk to the people you work with. Talk to the people in the synagogue, the religious people. Go ahead, talk to them. See if you can find anybody that can say without doubt that I've lied about anything. Find someone that I hurt intentionally. Find them. Go on. Investigate. Go all over the world if you want to. I'll wait. Take your time. Take as much time as you need to see if you can find someone that I've abused. I've intentionally hurt, physically, emotionally, or spiritually. Now don't come back and say, well, you told them the truth and that hurt. So you would rather have me lie? And maybe that'll make them feel good for a little while, but what happens when they find out that I lied to them? It hurts. It hurts worse. So, don't come back and accuse me of telling the truth. That makes you look silly. And we, as people, ought to really be striving for that very thing. And the confidence that we have should not be in ourselves, in our own ability to get it done. Because it's not us. Remember, we were born with the truth not being in us. We were born as enemies of God. Our nature was always in opposition to God. That's why Jesus had to come into our life and into our heart, and we've received him. If you have actually trusted him. And his Holy Spirit then lives inside of us and changes those things. So now we're no longer enemies of God. And the more we follow him, the closer we follow him, the more we will be like him. So long as we allow him to be the one living in and through us. I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, yet I don't live. It's Christ who lives within me. So he says there, I don't have a devil. I honor my Father, and ye do dishonor me, because they didn't want anything to do with him. Verse 50, and I seek not my own glory. There is none that seeketh. There is one that seeketh and judgeth. God glorifies Jesus, and Jesus glorifies God. He doesn't seek his own glory. He lets God glorify him. And God does. And Jesus, in turn, glorifies God. Remember what he said in Matthew chapter 5? That our good works should be seen as what? Glorifying our Father in heaven. That's what our good works should be seen as they are wrought in God. That they are being worked, and they are actually a work in God. We are just the vessels God is using to bring glory to himself. We're not to seek our own glory. It's not about making you or I look good, or bringing a name to ourselves, so that we can have the banners and the billboards and the accolades. It's always about being about our Father's business. That's what Jesus said. I am always about doing what my Father has wanted and told me to do, and saying the things that he wants me to say. And he wants me to tell you the truth, and I'm going to tell you the truth. He wants me to love you, and I'm going to love you. And it's the same for us. But it's not about us. It's about him. that's where they were missing it. And if we're not careful, it can be the same for us. Because it's very hard. Let's face it. When somebody pays us a compliment, or someone showers us with gifts, or we're moved up in our place of business, and we're working, and we're promoted, we want to sit back and say, hey, that was me, man, I did that. And we start to become prideful, and look at ourselves and say, I did that. And we forget that the psalmist tells us that it's the Lord who will raise people up. And it's the Lord who will set people down. And Paul wrote that I know when to be abased. And I know when I'm going to be put. Because it's all God. And sometimes we lose sight of that. And we get, perhaps we're in a place where we get angry and frustrated that, hey, look, I'm doing all this work and I'm not going anywhere. Well, maybe we ought to take a look at our heart. And maybe there's a reason why we're not going anywhere. Maybe we're stopping ourselves because it's our heart and our pride. And God wants to keep us there until our heart and our mind changes, so that if and when that promotion comes, it's not looked on as like, I'm so great at what I do that I put myself in this position. Instead of being grateful and thanking the Lord for what he has done. Verse 51, verily, verily, I say unto you, if any man keep my saying, he shall never see death. This is what Easter is all about. For you and I. This is it. That if we keep his saying, he shall never see death. And what is his saying that he wants us to keep? Well, what's the work of God? Going back to John 6, verse 29. What is the work of God? To believe in his Son. He's telling them, believe me. I'm telling you the truth, and you won't believe me. Believe me. That's his message. Believe what I'm telling you. Don't reject it. Because if you do believe in me, you'll never see death. And I'm sure that is something that was very confusing to them. So what are you talking about? Come on, dude, what do you mean? Our cemeteries are full of people who have believed in you. And they're dead. And the same thing is going on today. The cemeteries are filled with people who have believed in Jesus. And yet they're dead. Wait a minute. Are they dead? That's right. Their spirit isn't. Their body might be dead, but he's not talking about our body. He's talking about our spirits. He's always addressing the heart and the spirit. Because he knows that these bodies are temporary. This is just the house in which we live in. But when I went out to the cemetery yesterday for Diana's birthday, that plot of ground I was standing on, that her body was underneath, that's not where she is. That's only where her body, useless, lifeless, no good, worm-eaten body is. The remains of the shell, her house that she once lived in, that did her so wrong because of the disease, was disease-ridden. But now she's free. She's with the Savior. All that marker did was remind me of where her body is. But she's with Jesus. She didn't taste death. She received the promise of life in this verse. How encouraging to know that it doesn't end in the cemetery or at the funeral. that one day, because he rose, we will rise again. And we will be given a new body that will be free from the enslavement of the sin and the decay and the death that caused these bodies to be in pain and to age and to break down. I don't know about you. I'm ready for that day. I don't want to hold on to this rag. It's a rag. It reminds me of pain. Pain that as I each day get older. Man, I didn't have when I was a 20-year-old. I didn't even think about it. But now, when I was 20, stepping on a nail wasn't as big of a deal. Yeah, it hurt. But I'm thinking, Lou, at where he's at in life, it hurts a lot more when you do it now. And it takes a lot longer to heal, doesn't it? So Jesus isn't talking about tasting death of the physical body. He says, keep my saying, believe in me, and you won't have to go down the path of the real death. The one you don't want to see. The one that says, when you die, and that moment you face me, and you're going to find out how true and how real I am. You're going to find out that that tomb is empty, and I'm not in there, and nobody stole my body. I raised up as I said I would, and you're going to have to face me face to face. And you're going to confess that I am Lord. Because every knee and every tongue, every knee is going to bow. Every tongue is going to confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. And you don't want to wait to see me face to face to do that. Because then, even though you do that, you're going to say, yes, Jesus, I now believe. I'm going to say, it's too late. I never knew you. Depart from me, you worker of iniquity. That's not the position you want to find yourself in. And he's offering it to these Jews and these Pharisees who so adamantly hated him. He offers the same thing for all people today. And he says, that's the message I want you to take to these people that need to hear it. Love them. Stand on the truth. Don't fear. I am with you. I will help you through it, even when they hate you and want to silence you. Let's pray. Father, again, we thank you